Spring comes softly in Eugene. The light filters through my kitchen window like it's remembering something. I watch it crawl across the old tile floor, warming the cracks between grout lines I've scrubbed clean more times than I care to count. No one's tracking in dirt anymore, but I still mop. It's a ritual now. Something about the motion, the warm water, the clean scent, it quiets the corners of the day. The house creaks when it shifts, like bones settling into sleep. The refrigerator hums in a familiar rhythm, almost like a purr. I live alone, but I'm not lonely. This quiet, this stillness, it's mine. I built it. Not all at once, and not without cost, but it holds. Sometimes, though, when the wind dies down and the morning is too still, the quiet pulls something loose. It carries me back not in a dramatic flash, but in pieces. The weight of a chair scraping tile, a door closing just a little too hard. A voice. You'll never be more than a burden. That's the line that always returns. It wasn't shouted. That would have been easier somehow. No, it was said like a fact. Like gravity. Something I was supposed to just accept. I did for a while. I don't remember what I said back. Maybe nothing. Maybe I laughed. I used to do that a lot, laugh when I didn't understand the joke. Now I let the memory pass through me like weather. I pick up my mug, the chipped one with the faded sunflowers. I take it to the sink and rinse it out slowly the way you do when you have nowhere to be and all the time in the world. From the back window I can see the garden. Basil's already poking through. Tomatoes will come next. I whisper to the leaves sometimes, not because I think they understand, but because I need to hear my voice in this house. I don't talk to many people these days, not since I stopped trying to be heard. There's peace in that too. But some things don't stay buried. Some voices return when you least expect them. And some knocks at the door don't come with warnings. 15 years ago, I was 49 and in between everything. In between jobs, in between apartments, in between being the kind of daughter they wanted and the kind I could survive being. I'd just left another office job marketing assistant for a place that sold ergonomic chairs. My department got folded into some out-of-state team, and my name didn't make the new chart. Severance covered 2 months. After that, I started driving for errands, watching older neighbors' dogs, writing a blog at night that nobody read yet. I told my mother Marianne over the phone one afternoon. She was folding laundry, I could hear it in the background. She didn't say anything until I said the word writing. Then she laughed, not cruelly, just tired. Claire, honey, you're almost 50. You need a paycheck, not a poetry journal. A few days later, we gathered for a dinner at my younger brother Matt's house. He'd just gotten promoted district manager at a logistics company. His wife baked a layered cake. My parents brought balloons. I came with a wrapped box. Inside was something I'd stayed up 2 nights making, a hand-bound collection of my blog entries printed and tied with twine. I wrote a note to my mother on the first page. She opened it, smiled thinly, and said, "Oh, sweetie, maybe just keep these private. You know how people judge." Matt snorted. My dad, Frank, sipped his beer and didn't look at me. I took the book back before dessert. The next morning I called and asked if I could stay with them for a while. Just a few weeks until something opened up. The phone was quiet for longer than it should have been. "This family can't keep covering your flops," my father said. "You're not 25 anymore." And that was it. No yelling, no slammed doors. Just silence where love should have been. I moved what I could into my trunk, parked behind the Safeway on 10th Street, and spent the first night trying to sleep between the gear shift and a laundry basket. The second night I cried until the windows fogged. On the third night I took a walk in the dark just to remember what breathing used to feel like. I told myself I was free now, that I'd wanted this anyway, but even as I whispered it, the echo inside the car said something else. "You'll never be more than a burden." I didn't believe it yet. But I hadn't stopped carrying it either. The job came through a friend of a friend. A woman named Lillian Rivera needed part-time help. A stroke had taken most of the strength from her left side, and she didn't want to be sent to a facility. I didn't have formal nursing experience, but I knew how to listen, how to cook, how to sit beside someone without filling the air, just to avoid silence. Lillian's house smelled like cedar and dust and something sweeter, maybe rose water. She was in her late 70s with white hair kept in a loose braid and reading glasses chained around her neck. The first day, she handed me a list of tasks and then said, "We'll adjust." We're both learning each other. She called me dear, but not in a patronizing way. More like someone calling out across a quiet room. She let me do the dishes my way. She taught me how to fold fitted sheets with sharp corners. And in the evenings when her hands trembled too much for her books, she let me read aloud. "You have a voice for poetry," she said once, and I laughed, not because I disagreed, but because no one had ever said that before. That was the first time I opened my laptop again. I wrote after she fell asleep. Little things at first, fragments overheard phrases, stories about long bus rides and tired feet. I posted some of them on the old blog I never shut down. Nobody read them. Until one day someone did. Then 10 people. Then 100. By the end of that year, a small publisher reached out about turning the essays into a collection. I said yes, though. My hands shook when I signed the contract. Lillian clapped when I told her. "Make a space for yourself, Claire," she said. "Don't wait for someone to offer one." 3 years passed in a rhythm I came to cherish. Breakfast at 7, pills at 8, a short walk when the weather allowed. Then book soup silence. I stayed longer than I was paid to. I didn't keep track. When Lillian died, it was on a Tuesday during her nap. I found her with her mouth slightly open, her hand curled loosely near the edge of the blanket. She looked peaceful, not lonely. She left me a modest inheritance, more than I'd expected. Alongside it, tucked in an envelope with my name written in soft cursive, was a note. "You made me feel human again. Make yourself feel the same." And just like that, a new kind of door cracked open. The house sat on the edge of town, just past the bend where the road narrows and blackberry bushes crowd the fences. It was small, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and a sag in the front porch that made it lean like it was tired. But it had bones, solid ones. I could feel it when I pressed my palm against the doorframe the first time. It didn't creak. It waited. I used the inheritance from Lillian, what little savings I'd scraped together from book royalties, and a small community grant I hadn't dared apply for until she told me to stop assuming no. No one else knew I was buying. I didn't mention it on the blog. I didn't call Matt. I didn't call my parents. Some things don't need an audience. Some victories are too quiet for clapping. I moved in on a Thursday, carried boxes by myself, slept on a mattress on the floor for 3 weeks until I could afford a frame, hung curtains that didn't match, painted the kitchen cabinets a color I couldn't name somewhere between green and sorrow. I planted herbs first, then tomatoes, then flowers I couldn't identify but liked the shape of. I fixed what I could and let the rest stay broken in ways that didn't bother me. The floor sloped a little in the hallway. The door to the guest room stuck in winter. It didn't matter. This place wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I didn't post photos. I didn't invite anyone. The few readers who followed my blog just saw more essays pieces about choosing stillness, about learning what silence could give back when it wasn't punishment. I didn't tell them I was finally home. I wasn't ready to use the word. In the drawer beside the fridge, I kept a manila envelope. Inside were copies of the deed insurance papers and a simple letter I wrote to myself on moving day. If they ever come back, it said, "Remember, they already told you what you were worth." It wasn't bitterness. It was a boundary, one I could touch. They came on a Sunday, just after 11. I was in the backyard trimming rosemary and brushing soil off my knees when I heard the doorbell. Then the soft thud of footsteps, 2 pairs, maybe 3. I didn't check the window. I already knew. By the time I wiped my hands and opened the door, my parents were smiling like nothing had ever been broken. My mother, Mary Ann, held a lattice-top pie in a dish I recognized from her old kitchen. My father, Frank, wore a collared shirt tucked too neatly into pants that didn't quite fit right anymore. "We were just in the area," she said. "Thought we'd stop by." "It's been ages, Claire." I said nothing at first, just stepped aside. They walked in like they'd been invited, like the furniture still remembered them. My father commented on how cozy the living room felt, then opened the fridge without asking. My mother ran her hand across the windowsill and gave a slight nod. She was taking inventory. Then came the folder. Thick, cream-colored, already opened. My father laid it on the kitchen table like it was a gift. Inside were documents, trust forms, medical release drafts, some kind of residential application I didn't recognize at first. We've been thinking. My mother started this house is lovely, but it's a lot for one person. We've talked to Matt, and well, his place is under construction. His family needs somewhere quiet short term. It just makes sense. I stood still. You'd be taken care of course, she added quickly. There's a lovely senior living co-op just outside Medford. Full staff, gardening space. We already did a tour. Frank tapped the brochure. All you'd need to do is sign. We've arranged most of the paperwork. Just needs your signature and a couple follow-ups with the notary. I looked at the pen they'd placed beside the folder. I didn't ask them how they found the address. I didn't ask why they came without calling. I didn't ask why, after all this time, they still spoke in terms like logistics and solutions and plans. Instead, I asked one quiet question. Did you bring coffee? Marianne blinked. What coffee? I said again. You brought a pie. Did you bring coffee to go with it? She opened her mouth, then closed it. I walked to the cupboard, pulled down a mug, and began to boil the kettle. Their voices buzzed behind me about how it's just temporary, how families help each other, how this is for everyone's benefit. I let them speak. I listened, and I smiled the old smile. The one I used to wear at Matt's award dinners. The one I wore the day they told me I was too much trouble to keep around. The kettle clicked off, and I poured the water. Let them talk. That night, after they left with their pie and their folder and their carefully scripted concerns, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The house was too still, as if it had been holding its breath while they were here. I could feel it exhale through the floorboards. I reached into the drawer by the fridge, not for the deed, not for the envelope labeled "in case," but for something older, something I hadn't touched in over a decade. A letter, cream envelope. My handwriting on the front, their address in the corner. I'd written it 14 years ago from the front seat of a borrowed car parked behind a grocery store too proud to call. The letter was short, just a few lines. I told them I was sorry, that I hadn't meant to embarrass them, that I needed a place to stay just for a week, just until I could get back on my feet. They never opened it. The seal was still intact. I turned it over in my hands, then set it down gently on the table beside their folder of legal arrangements. That was the last time I asked to come home. Now they were asking me to leave mine. I stood and looked around the kitchen. The tile I laid myself, the clock that ticked too fast, the spoon drawer that stuck on the left side. None of it was worth much on paper, but I knew what it had cost. I walked outside into the dark. The soil smelled warm. I bent down near the basil and pressed my fingers into the earth, not for any reason, just to remember what grounding felt like. In the morning, I called the number I usually gave to other women, the legal nonprofit. I explained the situation. They remembered me. I wasn't just a referral voice this time, I was a client. Then I walked next door to see Teresa. She's lived there 7 years, former paralegal, sharp, discreet. We've exchanged tomato seedlings folded mail by mistake. She said yes before I even finished the ask. We made a list that afternoon. Who to notify, what to document, what not to say. I watered the garden again that night, slower than usual. One more line from the letter kept echoing. I won't be a problem. I just need somewhere to land. They had read the envelope but never opened it, and that told me more than any reply ever could. They came back the following weekend. I knew they would. People like them don't handle silence well. It creates too much space for doubt, for losing control. This time they brought Matt. My younger brother stood on the porch like it was an errand. He nodded toward the car where his wife sat idling engine running, one kid asleep in the back seat. We're just here to finalize things, he said. I opened the door, smiled like I had on Sunday. Let them in. The house looked the same, but it wasn't. I'd placed a recording device, one of Teresa's, on the shelf behind the sugar jar. Just a simple black button blinking once every few seconds. Another was in my apron pocket already on. My phone sat on the counter screen off app running. We've got everything here, Matt said, placing a newer folder on the table. Updated documents, just a couple initials and a signature. My father reached into his coat and pulled out a pen, offering it without a word. My mother stood near the hallway, gazing toward the guest room again, like she could already see curtains she'd pick out. "We really think this is best for everyone," she said softly. "You've done well here, Claire." "But don't you think it's time to share what you've built?" I didn't answer. Instead, I reached for a small envelope tucked beneath the fruit bowl, opened it carefully, laid its contents on the table one by one. First, a certified letter from a doctor confirming my full mental capacity dated 3 days prior. Next, a printout of state elder exploitation laws highlighted. Then, a notarized statement from Teresa detailing prior comments made during a neighborhood walk, including my mother's remark about getting Claire to sign before she starts asking questions. Matt paled. My father's hand lowered slowly. My mother didn't blink. Finally, I pressed play on my phone. The recording was clear. Her voice. "It's just a matter of making her comfortable. Once she's in the facility, we can repaint this place. Maybe do something with the porch." Silence filled the room like smoke. "You recorded us?" Matt asked. "No," I said. "You recorded yourselves." I just listened. I stood up. Not with drama, just with decision. This house is not a solution. It's not a backup plan. And I'm not furniture you move to make space. They left without closing the front door. Matt was the first to walk out. He didn't say anything, just shook his head like he was the one disappointed. My father followed slower with that look he used to give me at report card nights, as if I'd broken something fragile on purpose. My mother lingered in the doorway, one hand on the frame, the other on her purse strap. "You always needed to prove something," she said. "Not anymore," I answered. The door clicked shut behind them. I locked it. Not out of fear, but finality. Later that week, Teresa helped me finalize the will. We sat at the kitchen table while the garden light shifted across the linoleum. It took 3 signatures and one long breath. The house would go someday to a local shelter that helps older women escape financial abuse and coercive control. I added a clause barring direct blood relatives from inheriting it. "Too harsh?" Teresa asked. "No," I said. "Just true." There was no ceremony, no celebratory drink, just the quiet sound of a boundary being drawn and held. I stood in the backyard that evening, the light low and gold. The porch still sagged. The herb bed needed weeding. A bird had pulled thread loose from the screen door. It wasn't perfect, but it was mine. And for the first time in a long, long while, I could say that without apology. The postcard came on a Thursday. No return address, just a drawing of a sunflower hand-colored the sky, a little too green, the petals uneven. Inside, in a careful, slanted scrawl, "Hi, Miss Claire. My mom said thank you." She smiled again. I like when she smiles. "I hope you still have flowers. Love, Ellie." I stood at the mailbox holding that card for longer than I should have. The wind picked up, rustling the rosemary. A bee hovered near the thyme, then drifted away. I didn't cry. I walked inside, opened the old recipe box, blue tin dented corner, still faintly smelling of cinnamon, and slipped the card next to a folded note I hadn't looked at in years, the unopened letter I'd once written to my parents. It didn't hurt to see it anymore. I walked back out to the garden. The soil was soft beneath my soles. Tomatoes climbing wild now, mint escaping its planter. A marigold had bloomed overnight. I trimmed back what needed trimming, let grow what wanted to grow. Some days the quiet feels thick, like a coat that never quite fits. But I wear it anyway, because I know now I didn't vanish. I didn't get erased. Something stayed. Something took root. And in this garden, even silence can bloom. If you've ever been treated like a guest in the life you built, if you've ever stood still while they planned your disappearance, not with cruelty but with convenience, just leave one word below, any word you needed to hear back then. I'll be here to read it.